I was 17 the first time I understood that adults can lie even when they smile. It happened in our kitchen on one of those cold Saturday mornings in March when my dad would drink coffee and pretend everything in our house was normal. Mom had already gone to work, weekend shifts at the hospital paid more, and it was just me and him. That was when he tossed the old brown envelope onto the counter like it was nothing. His voice was rough, too careless for something that looked so old. "What's this?" I asked, wiping maple syrup off my fingers and picking up the envelope. "Trash," he muttered, without looking at me. "Probably your grandpa's old documents. He kept everything like they mattered." My chest tightened. Grandpa died 2 months before, and his absence still felt like someone had taken the stable floor beneath my life and replaced it with loose boards. I slid the papers out gently. Inside was an old passbook, one of those physical savings account books you only see in movies now. The cover was worn blue and had his handwriting on it. He'd always written in that clean, careful cursive that made everything seem important. I opened it. Numbers, dates, deposits, withdrawals. I didn't understand what I was looking at, but I could feel the weight of it. "Why would Grandpa keep this?" I asked. Dad grabbed it from my hands so fast it startled me. He didn't even read it. He just walked to the trash can and dropped it in like it belonged there. "I said it's trash." I swear it made a sharp sound when it hit the plastic bag, like it was protesting. "Dad, wait, why are you throwing it away?" I whispered. He finally looked at me, really looked, and something cold flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not sadness, something I couldn't name yet. Something secret. Because nothing in that old man's house belonged to him after he died, and it sure as hell doesn't belong to you, Dad said. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. Grandpa always told me the opposite. He'd whisper, "One day I'll leave you something just for you." I used to think it was jewelry or a letter or some sentimental thing. I never thought it would be something my dad wanted to hide. Dad turned away, washed his cup, and left the kitchen. 5 minutes later, the back door slammed and I heard the truck start. He didn't come home until late that night. The house stayed silent, like it was afraid to break. I waited until his truck pulled away before I quietly opened the trash can. The passbook was buried under coffee grounds and a wet cereal bowl. I pulled it out anyway, rinsed off the edges, dried it with paper towels. It felt like I was rescuing a piece of Grandpa's voice. I sat down in my room with the door locked and read the little entries. The first date was from 2001. The last one was from last year. All in his neat, careful cursive. Deposits, small amounts at first, bigger later. One page had a faint note, for L. L. My name was Lily. Nobody else in the family had an L. My hands trembled. I whispered, "He meant me." I didn't know what the account balance meant. It was a 4-digit number at the bottom of the last page, scratched faint, like Grandpa hadn't been sure. I didn't know banks still use these things. I didn't know if the account still existed. I didn't know if Dad knew what was in it or why he wanted it gone. But I knew one thing. I had to find out. The next day, when Mom asked why I was suddenly begging her to take me to the bank after school, she just laughed and said, "Since when do teenagers care about banks?" "Since now," I said, and I tried to sound casual, but my chest was pounding so hard it hurt. At the bank, everything smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. The tellers smiled like mannequins, all pastel sweaters and perfect ponytails. I handed the old passbook across the counter to a woman named Carly, who blinked at it like she was staring at a fossil. "Wow," she said. "I don't think I've seen one of these since I was little." "Is it still valid?" I asked, trying to sound like I understood what I was asking. She flipped through the pages, her eyebrows slowly rising. Then she typed something into the computer, then typed again harder, fast, like she doubted the first result. "Huh," she murmured. "What?" I whispered. "I need you to wait a second. I'm going to get my manager." My throat tightened. Mom was beside me, scrolling her phone, not paying attention. The manager came out, tall, mid-50s, wearing the kind of suit that looked too expensive for this small-town branch. He took the passbook, raised his glasses, and read each page slowly, like Grandpa had left a puzzle behind. Then he looked at me directly. "You're Lily?" My heart skipped. "Yes." He tapped the cover. "L. I suppose that makes sense. Would you mind stepping into my office?" Mom finally looked up, frowning. "Is there some kind of problem?" "No," he said, and his voice was calm but serious. "Actually, I think there may be something here you both need to understand." The office was small. The blinds were half closed. The manager didn't sit right away. He opened a drawer, pulled out some printed records, and placed them carefully on the desk. This account was converted into a certificate several years ago, which means the balance matured. Mum blinked. "Matured into what?" He took a breath. "Into quite a lot more." My hands went numb. "How much is a lot?" I asked. He slid the paper toward me. The number was more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life. Mom gasped. I couldn't breathe. My vision sparkled at the edges, and I dug my nails into my palms to stay conscious. The manager leaned close, lowering his voice like he didn't want the whole world to hear it. "Your grandfather left this to you alone, and according to our records, your father tried to close the account last month." Mom's jaw dropped. "He what?" The manager nodded. "Yes, but he was denied. He didn't have legal access. And now that you're of age, the funds can only go to you." Everything inside me froze solid. I didn't know if I was angry or scared or both. Dad knew. He knew about it the whole time. He knew, and he tried to take it. And when he couldn't, he tried to make it disappear. He tried to make me believe it was trash. Mom pressed her mouth to her lips. I didn't trust myself to speak. The manager waited. The office waited. It felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Still, heavy, electrified. Mom whispered, "What do we do now?" The manager looked at me again. Not Mom, not the document, not the account, but me. "That's up to Lily, but I think your father is expecting a different outcome." The blinds rattled softly from the vent's airflow, but it sounded like thunder in my ears. I sat there, clutching the passbook like it was the last surviving piece of Grandpa's voice. I didn't know what kind of war I was about to walk into at home, but I could feel the first shot had already been fired. When we got back to the car, Mom didn't start the engine right away. She just stared through the windshield at the people walking in and out of the bank like they were extras in a movie we weren't part of anymore. The passbook lay in my lap, the edges still stained from Dad's coffee grounds. I traced the embossed letters of the bank logo with my thumb until it started to feel like Braille. Mom finally exhaled, shaking her head. "I don't understand why your father would do that." I watched her knuckles tighten around the steering wheel. She wasn't really asking me. She was talking to herself. Like maybe if she said it out loud enough times, the universe would give her a clean explanation that didn't make her marriage sound like a mistake. When we pulled into the driveway, Dad's truck wasn't there. The air felt hollow. I walked straight to my room, shut the door, and sat on the bed. I opened the passbook again. Grandpa's handwriting looked different now. Bolder, sharper, heavier, like he'd known someone would try to erase him. I tried to remember the last thing he ever said to me over the phone. It was the night before Dad picked me up from his house for Thanksgiving. He sounded tired, but proud. "You're smarter than you act," he told me. "Just don't let anyone talk you out of being curious." I didn't know what that meant then. Now it felt like instructions I hadn't understood in time. Dad got home around 8 p.m. His boots hit the porch hard like he wanted the whole house to hear him arrive. I sat on the top step of the stairs, hidden behind the wall where I could see the living room through the vent slats. He dropped his keys, kicked off his boots, and headed to the kitchen without saying hello. Mom followed him, slow and cautious. "I took Lily to the bank today." His back stiffened. He didn't turn around. "Why?" Because she had a right to know, Mom said quietly. Dad laughed, one sharp, ugly burst of sound. Know what? That your father's house was full of junk? It wasn't junk, Mom snapped, and you know damn well it wasn't. Dad finally turned to face her. His eyes were dark. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Mom didn't back down. Then why did you try to close it? The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It pulsed. It screamed. Dad clenched his jaw, his hands shaking as he ran them over his face. You don't understand, he muttered. Then explain it to me. Explain why you tried to empty your own daughter's account. Dad slammed his fist on the counter. A glass tipped over and shattered on the tile. I flinched so hard my teeth clicked. I deserved it, he shouted. After everything I did for that old man, after everything I did for him when nobody else would, he owed me that money. He promised. He promised. Mom stared at him like she didn't recognize the guy she married. So you were just going to steal it? From your daughter? It wasn't hers, Dad said. It wasn't meant for her. He just wrote that L crap to spite me, and he knew it. My heartbeat crawled up my throat. He knew. He always knew. Grandpa's note wasn't sentimental. It was a move in a game that had been going on long before I understood any of the rules. Mom glanced toward the stairs. I moved back fast, slipping down a few steps on silent feet before she could catch me watching her. I sat on the floor in the dark, listening. That money isn't yours, Mom said, and it sure as hell isn't mine. It's Lily's, legally and morally. Dad paced the kitchen, muttering curses under his breath. It should have been mine. It's not, Mom said, and the bank told her everything. Dad froze. You took her to the bank. Yes, and the manager said the funds require her authorization. She's of age now. Dad didn't respond. I could hear him breathing, fast, sharp, uneven. The kind of breathing you hear right before someone punches a wall or breaks something valuable just to prove they can. Mom didn't say anything else. She just walked away. The next morning smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee, which meant Dad was up before all of us. I came downstairs just as he flicked the stove off. He didn't look at me, didn't say good morning, didn't even breathe in my direction long enough to acknowledge I existed. Mom grabbed the car keys. She didn't ask him to come, but he followed anyway. The drive to the bank felt like sitting in a submarine, everyone holding their breath, waiting for the pressure outside to crush the hull. Dad tapped his foot on the floorboard the entire time, vibrating the whole car. Mom kept fixing her hair in the rearview mirror, even though it didn't need fixing. I pressed my forehead against the glass and pretended the trees outside were passing through us instead of the other way around. When we walked into the bank, the air conditioning slapped my skin. The manager recognized us immediately and waved us back into his office. As soon as the door shut, Dad demanded, "Tell us what the complication is." No hello, no courtesy, just hunger. The manager didn't flinch. He folded his hands neatly on the desk, glanced at me, then at Mom, then landed on Dad like he had been saving it. It concerns the beneficiary structure. Dad sat back, crossing his arms like he was about to cross-examine the guy. It's my father-in-law's money. I'm his son-in-law. It should have been straightforward. The manager opened a folder and slid a photocopy across the table. Your father-in-law visited this bank 3 times in the last 8 years. Each time he made modifications. Mom leaned in. Modifications? Yes, the manager said. Originally, the deposits were registered under a standard education fund. Then he added a contingency clause after your father raised concerns about taking possession early. Later, he paused, searching for a diplomatic word. Added protective conditions. Dad's jaw flexed. Protective against who? The manager looked directly at him. Against anyone attempting to seize the account unlawfully or without consent. Mom drew a sharp breath. Dad didn't move. I swallowed hard. And as of his last visit, he converted the account to a trust vehicle, not a savings fund, not a basic account, a trust with a successor trustee. Who? Dad barked. The manager looked at me. Her.
My pulse hit my ears so loud I couldn't hear anything else for a second. Dad shoved his chair back. "That's ridiculous. She was a kid." She was 16 at the time, old enough for a trust successor designation under state law, provided the original trustee, your father-in-law, filed appropriate documentation. He did. Dad's face flushed the color of raw meat. "So what? A teenager controls the family money?" "It's not family money," the manager corrected. "It was never titled to the family, only to her." Dad let out a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "So I get nothing after everything I did for him?" Mom stared at him hard. "What did you do for him?" Dad turned slowly toward her. "Don't start." But the manager wasn't finished. "The trust has an instruction letter," he said. "Your father-in-law wrote it by hand, sealed it, filed it. It was to be opened only upon the trustee's death and only with the successor trustee present." His words swirled around me. My fingertips tingled. Mom whispered, "Can we see it?" The manager nodded, drew out a sealed envelope, and passed it to me. My hands trembled as I tore the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Grandpa's handwriting, messy, stubborn, and somehow alive. It said, "I'm not dying and leaving you defenseless. The money is yours, Elle, not your father's. He already took what he wanted from me in life. He doesn't get to take what I saved for you in death. Do something for yourself, something he can't touch." There was no signature flourish, no apology, just purpose. Dad's chair tipped backwards as he pushed up. He paced, breathing fast, palms on his head. He always hated me. He never forgave me. He wanted to embarrass me. Mom didn't comfort him. Not once. She just watched him unravel like a sweater pulled from the wrong end. "And there's one more thing," the manager said. Dad whipped around. "What now? Blood diamonds? Gold bars? A deed to the moon?" The manager ignored him. "The trust accrues quarterly, with interest. He made consistent, high-yield contributions for over a decade. It's not a negligible sum." Mom asked softly, "How much?" The manager slid a printed statement across the desk. Dad lunged for it, but the manager held it back until I reached out to take it. I scanned the numbers. I blinked. My throat tightened. Dad whispered, "How much?" I read it out loud barely. $742,043. Nobody spoke. Not even Dad. Mom wiped her cheek like dust had landed there. Dad slowly sank into his chair, staring at the floor as if it might open and swallow him. The manager cleared his throat. "I'll need you to sign trustee confirmation paperwork and update the trust's mailing location." I nodded mechanically. I signed. I initialed, I verified. I kept my face still while my insides rearranged the map of my life. Dad didn't say a word in the car. Not at dinner, not before bed, not the next morning. 2 days later, he finally spoke. He didn't knock before stepping into my room. He looked smaller, but not gentler. "So that's it. You win." I didn't look up from the papers I was organizing. It wasn't a competition. Everything's a competition. You just didn't know you were playing until you got lucky. Lucky. That word stuck to my ribs like glue. He rubbed his hands together. "Look, just be reasonable. You're 18. You don't know what to do with that kind of money. I could invest it, grow it, manage it." "For you or for me?" He hesitated, and in that pause was every answer he wouldn't say out loud. He left without closing the door. Mom asked me that night if I was okay. I said, yes. It was a lie. My world had shifted, but nobody told me what direction it tilted. Weeks passed. Dad stopped mentioning the money, but his silence wasn't surrender. It was plotting. Mom found pamphlets for attorneys under his side of the bed, ones that specialized in contesting trusts, ones that specialized in reallocating inherited assets. Every day I woke waiting for him to make a move, and yet he didn't. Not yet. The trust sat in the bank like a loaded gun, legal, quiet, waiting, and Grandpa's note lived in my desk drawer. I read it sometimes at night when the house was too silent and the future felt too sharp. He wrote, "Do something for yourself." I didn't know what that meant yet, but eventually I would. And Dad would learn the part he never expected, that Grandpa wasn't finished protecting me, not even in death.